The unlikely recruit. The ceremonial hall of the Terran warship Indomitable gleamed with polished metals and holographic displays of past victories. Captain Darius Frost stood at attention, his weathered face betraying nothing as General Hemsworth droned on about valor, courage, and other words that had long since lost their meaning to him. Darius had spent 15 years in the Terran Defense Force, the last 5 fighting the brutal Nexus insurgency. He'd seen too many good soldiers die for too many bad reasons. Captain Frost, the general's voice boomed across the hall. For your exemplary service during the siege of Nova Proxima, your single-handed neutralization of the enemy command structure, and the rescue of 37 civilian hostages, you are hereby awarded the Star of Terra First Class. Polite applause rippled through the audience, officers, diplomats, and politicians who'd never set foot on a battlefield. The medal felt heavy against Darius's chest, another weight to carry. As per military tradition, the general continued, you may claim a reward of your choosing. This archaic custom had always struck Darius as bizarre, a holdover from wars fought centuries ago when commanders offered prizes to their best warriors. Now it was merely ceremonial, typically resulting in a promotion, land grant, or luxury accommodation on one of the core worlds. Darius stepped forward, his boots clicking against the polished floor. I'll inspect the available options, sir. The general gestured toward a display of glittering rewards, advanced weapons, deeds to prestigious properties, even a customized shuttle. Darius walked past them all, his eyes fixed on the corridor beyond. Captain, the general's voice held a note of confusion. Darius kept walking until he reached the holding area adjacent to the ceremony hall. There, behind energy barriers, stood the other rewards, captured assets from the recent campaign. Artifacts, specimens, and prisoners deemed valuable for research or intelligence. In the farthest cell, a slight figure huddled in the corner. Unlike the other prisoners who snarled or cowered, this one simply observed, large iridescent eyes reflecting the harsh lighting. The alien was rail-thin with skin the color of twilight and elongated limbs that seemed almost too delicate to support even its minimal weight. 2 antenna-like appendages rose from its head, occasionally twitching as if sensing something beyond normal perception. That one, Darius said, pointing. Silence fell over the observation area. The general cleared his throat. Captain Frost, that's a Stellaran. They're barely sentient by our metrics. The species was nearly wiped out when we took their home system. Does it have a designation? Darius asked. The guard consulted his datapad, specimen NX7291. Nix, Darius said, testing the sound. I'll call her Nix. Her, the general raised an eyebrow. These creatures don't conform to human gender binary, and more importantly, Captain, this specimen has no tactical value. It's not even combat class. Perhaps you'd prefer something more useful. Darius turned to face the general, his expression neutral but his eyes hard. With respect, sir, I've made my choice, the Stellaran Nix. The general's face tightened, but he nodded curtly. Making a scene would reflect poorly on command, especially with the media drones hovering nearby. Very well, have the necessary transfer documents prepared. 20 minutes later, Darius led the alien through the corridors of the Indomitable, ignoring the puzzled glances of crew members. Nix moved silently, her steps so light they barely made a sound on the metal flooring. Her restraints, a thin band of neural suppressors around her wrists, seemed almost excessive given her fragile appearance. You understand standard, don't you? Darius asked when they reached his temporary quarters. Nix stared at him, her large eyes unblinking, then gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Good, Darius touched the control panel and the door slid open. These are my quarters. You'll stay here until we leave for my post on Outpost Theta. The alien hesitated at the threshold, antenna twitching rapidly. It's safe, Darius said, his voice softer than before. No one will harm you here. Nix stepped inside, her gaze darting around the Spartan room. Her antenna continued their rapid movement, and Darius made a mental note. They appeared to be sensory organs of some kind. Once inside, Darius tapped his wrist console, and the restraints around Nix's wrists deactivated, falling to the floor with a metallic clink. The alien stared at her freed hands as if they belonged to someone else. You're not a prisoner here, Darius said, watching her carefully. You're under my protection now. Nix's eyes narrowed slightly, skepticism evident even across species boundaries. She opened her mouth, revealing teeth that were surprisingly similar to human ones, though smaller and more uniform. Why? The word came out raspy, as if her vocal cords were unaccustomed to forming human sounds. It was a fair question, one that Darius wasn't entirely sure he could answer. He sat down on a chair, deliberately making himself appear less threatening. Let's just say I recognize potential when I see it. The journey to Outpost Theta took 3 days in slip space. During that time, Nyx remained mostly silent, observing everything with those unsettlingly perceptive eyes. She ate the standard rations without complaint, though Darius noticed she preferred the vegetable compounds to the synthetic proteins. Commander Vega met them at the landing pad, her expression cycling through professional courtesy to shock to barely concealed disdain as she spotted Nyx trailing behind Darius. "Captain Frost," she said, saluting, "welcome to Outpost Theta. I see you've brought company." "This is Nyx," Darius said simply. "She'll be staying with me. I'll need quarters suitable for both of us." Vega's mouth tightened. "Sir, with all due respect, bringing an alien, particularly one from a hostile species, onto a military outpost raises significant security concerns." "Your concerns are noted, Commander. Now about those quarters." The first week at Outpost Theta passed in a blur of administrative duties and thinly veiled curiosity about Nyx. Personnel stared when they thought Darius wasn't looking. A few made comments just loud enough to be overheard. Pet alien, trophy, and worse. Darius ignored them all and focused on Nyx. Each morning, he took her to the training facilities during off hours, starting with basic physical conditioning. The gravity on Theta was slightly higher than standard, and Nyx struggled initially, her slender limbs trembling with exertion after just minutes of exercise. "Again," Darius would say, not unkindly but firmly when she faltered. On the 8th day, during a basic balance exercise, Darius noticed something odd. Nyx's antenna went rigid moments before the facility's emergency lights tested, a scheduled event he'd forgotten about. When he mentioned it, she tilted her head. "Vibrations," she said, her standard improving daily. "Before light, machine hums different." Darius spent the next day testing her sensitivity. Nyx could detect minute changes in electromagnetic fields, feel vibrations through the floor that human instruments barely registered, and sense shifts in air pressure that preceded mechanical failures. "Remarkable," Lieutenant Hodge said when Darius demonstrated Nyx's abilities by having her identify which of 5 identical containers held an active comm unit. "But what's the practical application? She's still too physically weak for combat." "Not everything in war is about who hits hardest," Darius replied. Their breakthrough came during the 3rd week. Darius had adapted the training regimen to focus on Nyx's unique sensory abilities rather than trying to force her into human combat paradigms. They were in the simulator room, running a stealth detection drill, when the facility alarms blared. "Unscheduled drill?" Nyx asked, her antenna quivering. Darius checked his wrist console. "No, stay here." But as he turned to leave, Nyx grabbed his arm. "Wait, more vibrations, not normal pattern." "What do you mean?" "Below, coming through maintenance tunnels, many feet." Darius didn't hesitate. He hit the comm panel. "Commander Vega, this is Captain Frost. Possible infiltration through the maintenance tunnels. Lock down all access points to level 3 immediately." "Captain, what are you?" "Trust me, Commander, do it now." 15 minutes later, security teams had captured 3 infiltrators, mercenaries hired by remnants of the Nexus insurgency, who had indeed been using the maintenance tunnels to access the outpost's command center. In the aftermath, Darius found Nyx sitting quietly in the corner of their quarters, her antenna drooping slightly. "You saved lives today," he said, sitting across from her. "I heard them, that is all." "That's more than anyone else could do." Darius leaned forward. "Nyx, when I chose you at that ceremony, people thought I was crazy. Maybe I was, but I saw something in you, something valuable." Nyx's antenna twitched. "What?" "Potential, the ability to perceive what others miss, to sense danger before it arrives." He paused. "The Stellarans weren't warriors, were they? You were scouts, sensors." "We were watchers," Nyx said softly. "We listened to stars, to planets, to space itself, until your kind came." Darius nodded. The Terran military sees value only in what can fight, but knowing where and when to fight, that's often more important than the battle itself. Nyx studied him with those unsettling eyes. "You want me to watch for you?" "I want you to use your gifts as you choose, but yes, I believe you could help prevent conflicts before they begin." Darius stood. Tomorrow, we start real training, not to make you a soldier, but to hone what you already are. For the first time since he'd met her, Nix smiled. A small, uncertain expression that transformed her alien features into something almost familiar. I will try, she said simply. Outside the window of their quarters, the twin moons of Theta cast their pale light across the outpost. Somewhere beyond the perimeter, danger lurked, mercenaries, insurgents, perhaps even new alien threats. But for now, in this quiet moment, Darius felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope, the proving ground. 2 months passed at Outpost Theta, each day bringing subtle changes in Nyx. Her thin frame remained slender but took on a wiry strength. She moved with increasing confidence through the facility, no longer flinching when passing groups of soldiers. And her abilities had grown sharper under Darius's guidance. They had established a routine. Mornings began with physical conditioning adapted to Stellaran physiology, exercises focusing on agility and endurance rather than brute strength. Afternoons were devoted to honing her sensory skills, pushing the limits of what she could detect. Evenings often found them in Darius's quarters, with Nyx learning about Terran military history and strategy while Darius quietly absorbed what little she was willing to share about her nearly extinct people. Commander Vega had grudgingly acknowledged Nyx's value after the thwarted infiltration attempt. She'd even authorized limited access to the outpost systems, allowing Nyx to monitor sensor feeds, though always under supervision. I still don't understand why you waste your time with this creature, Lieutenant Hodge remarked as he and Darius observed Nyx in the monitoring center, her antenna twitching slightly as she studied the outpost's perimeter feeds. She's not a soldier, she's not even human. Not being human doesn't make her less valuable, Darius replied. And not every battle is won by soldiers. Before Hodge could respond, Nyx's head snapped up. Captain, she called, her voice urgent. Atmospheric disturbance northwest quadrant. Darius joined her at the console. Show me. Sensors show nothing yet, she said, antenna vibrating rapidly. But there's a pattern in the upper ionosphere, similar to stealth dropships used by mercenary groups. Darius didn't hesitate. Sound yellow alert. I want double patrols on the northwest perimeter and orbital scanners recalibrated to search for thermal anomalies. Hodge frowned. Sir, we can't scramble the outpost based on the aliens' feelings. Those feelings saved us once before, Darius countered. And this isn't a full alert, just precautionary measures. Commander Vega entered the monitoring center, her expression tense. Captain Frost, what's this about an atmospheric disturbance? Potential stealth infiltration, Commander. Nyx detected anomalies consistent with cloaked vessels. Vega glanced at the alien, then back to Darius. Our sensors aren't showing anything. Your sensors aren't designed to detect the microfluctuations in magnetic resonance that precede stealth field generation, Nyx said quietly. Stellarans can feel them. A tense silence followed, broken by the communications officer. Commander, Patrol Team Bravo reports unusual thermal signatures in the northwest scrublands, possible mechanical heat sources. Vega's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Nyx with new respect, then turned to Darius. Sound red alert, all personnel to battle stations. The attack came at dusk. 3 cloaked dropships, each carrying 24 mercenaries equipped with advanced weaponry and thermal camouflage suits. They struck simultaneously at 3 different points along the outpost's perimeter, a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm the defenders. Darius and Nyx were in the command center when the first explosions rocked the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red as damage reports flooded in. Western perimeter breached, reported a harried communications officer. Enemy forces moving toward the power core. Eastern gate under heavy fire, called another. Medical reporting multiple casualties. Commander Vega turned to Darius. Captain, I need you at the western breach. Take a security team and hold that line. Darius nodded, already moving toward the door. He paused, looking back at Nyx. Stay in the command center. Help coordinate our response using the sensor feeds. Nyx's antenna twitched nervously, but she nodded. Darius didn't miss the uncertainty in her eyes or the determination beneath it. The western corridor was chaos. Smoke filled the air, emergency bulkheads had slammed shut, and the bodies of both defenders and attackers littered the floor. Darius led his security team through the haze, pulse rifle raised. They're trying to reach the central power distribution hub, Darius shouted over the comm. If they sabotage it, the entire outpost loses defensive capabilities. Understood, Captain, Vega's voice crackled through his earpiece. Reinforcements are on their way, but they're delayed by fighting in the eastern sector. A burst of plasma fire erupted from a side corridor, catching one of Darius's team in the shoulder. The soldier went down with a cry of pain. Darius dragged him behind cover, returning fire in controlled bursts. Sir, came Nyx's voice through his comm. Thermal readings indicate a squad of 8 hostiles advancing toward your position through maintenance shaft Alpha 7. Alpha 7, Darius frowned. That's behind us. They're trying to box us in. Correct, you have approximately 40 seconds before contact. Darius made a split-second decision. Team, fall back to Junction B12. We'll make our stand there. He tapped his comm. Nyx, guide us. Where are the enemy concentrations? For the next 10 minutes, Nyx became their eyes, directing them around enemy positions, identifying weak points in the mercenary formations, and warning of ambushes before they could be sprung. With her guidance, Darius's small team managed to hold their section of the outpost against significantly superior numbers. Then the communications system went down. Nyx, Darius called into his comm. Nothing but static answered. Command, do you copy? More static. They must have taken out the central communications hub, said Corporal Jennings, one of the security team. We're on our own. A massive explosion shook the outpost, and the lights flickered ominously. The mercenaries were getting closer to their objective. Back in the command center, Nyx stared at the dead communications console. Around her, officers worked frantically to restore systems and coordinate the defense, but without internal comms, they were fighting blind. We're losing, Commander Vega said grimly, watching as section after section of the holographic outpost display turned red, indicating enemy control. Nyx's antenna quivered. She could sense the vibrations of battle throughout the facility, the rhythm of gunfire, the tremors of explosions, the hum of energy weapons, and beneath it all something else, a pattern. The mercenaries weren't moving randomly. They were being directed, coordinated by someone or something. She closed her eyes, focusing her senses outward, searching for the source of that coordination. There, she whispered, eyes snapping open, command frequency, non-standard encryption. She pointed to a secondary communications console. They're using our own sensor grid against us. Lieutenant Hodge looked skeptical. Even if that's true, we can't intercept their transmissions without the encryption key. I don't need to hear their words, Nyx said, only disrupt their pattern. She turned to Commander Vega. Permission to access the emergency broadcast system. Vega hesitated, then nodded sharply. Do it. Nyx moved to the emergency broadcast panel and began adjusting settings with surprising speed. Her fingers danced across the controls, altering frequencies, modulating wavelengths. What are you doing? Hodge demanded. Stellarans communicate through vibration patterns, she explained, not looking up. These mercenaries use neural implants to coordinate, standard for their type. Such implants are sensitive to certain harmonic frequencies. With a final adjustment, she activated the system. Nothing seemed to happen, no sound, no visible effect. But Nyx's antenna went rigid, vibrating almost imperceptibly. On the holographic display, the mercenary advance suddenly faltered. Red sections stopped expanding. Then, gradually, they began to recede. It's working, Vega breathed. What did you do? Created a subsonic interference pattern, Nyx said, eyes still closed in concentration. Disrupts neural implant communications and induces mild disorientation. They can't coordinate anymore. In the western corridor, Darius noticed the change immediately. The precise, coordinated attacks of the mercenaries devolved into disjointed individual actions. Their formations broke down, their tactics became erratic. They're losing cohesion, he said to his team. Push forward. The tide turned quickly after that. Without coordination, the superior numbers of the mercenaries meant little against the disciplined defense of the outpost. Within an hour, the attackers were in full retreat, fleeing back to their dropships with Terran security forces in pursuit. All except one. Darius found himself face to face with the mercenary commander, a hulking figure in enhanced combat armor, neural implant ports visible at his temples. Unlike his troops, he seemed unaffected by whatever had disrupted their coordination. You think you've won, Captain? The commander growled, drawing a vibroblade that hummed with deadly energy. This outpost holds the key to finding the last Stellarin colony. My employers want that information, and they'll pay handsomely for the alien you've been keeping as a pet. Darius raised his pulse rifle. You're not taking her. The commander laughed. Protective of your alien, aren't you? Is it because she's the last of her kind, or have you gone native, developed a taste for the exotic? I protect her because she's under my command, Darius said evenly, and because she just outsmarted your entire operation. The mercenary commander lunged forward with unexpected speed, his vibroblade slashing through the air. Darius fired, but the shot glanced off the commander's armor. The blade caught him across the arm, slicing through his uniform and into flesh. He stumbled back, pulse rifle clattering to the floor. The commander advanced, blade raised for a killing blow, and then stopped, his body going rigid. Behind him stood Nyx, her slender hand pressed against the back of his neck, directly over a neural implant port. The commander's eyes widened in pain and shock. Stellarans aren't warriors, Nyx said softly. We're watchers. We listen to the patterns of the universe, including the electrical patterns of your primitive neural enhancements. Her antenna twitched once. And sometimes we can change those patterns. The commander collapsed, his body convulsing briefly before going still. Nyx turned to Darius, who was clutching his wounded arm. He'll live. His neural systems are temporarily overloaded, not destroyed. Darius nodded, wincing. Good work, soldier. Her eyes widened slightly at the word. The aftermath of the attack brought unexpected changes to Outpost Theta. Repair crews worked around the clock to restore damaged systems, medical staff treated the wounded, and security teams debriefed survivors, piecing together the details of the mercenary assault. But the most significant change came 3 days later, when General Hemsworth himself arrived on an emergency inspection tour. Darius and Nyx stood at attention in Commander Vega's office as the general reviewed the battle reports. His eyebrows rose progressively higher with each screen he swiped through. Let me be clear, he said finally, looking up at them. You're telling me that this, Stellarin, not only detected the enemy approach before our sensors, but also single-handedly disrupted their command structure using our broadcast system. Yes, sir, Commander Vega confirmed. Without Nyx's intervention, we would likely have lost the outpost. The general turned to Nyx, studying her with calculating eyes. I admit I was skeptical when Captain Frost selected you as his reward. It seemed an eccentric choice at best. He straightened. I was wrong. Nyx's antenna twitched in surprise. The Terran Defense Force has long viewed the Stellarans as a defeated curiosity, the general continued. But perhaps we've been overlooking valuable allies. Your abilities would be an asset to our operations, particularly as we face increasing threats from beyond our current borders. Sir, Darius interjected, Nyx has been through enough, if you're suggesting. I'm suggesting, Captain Frost, the general cut him off, that your instincts were correct. This Stellaran Nyx has proven her worth, and there may be others like her who could serve alongside our forces not as prisoners but as specialists. He turned back to Nyx. The mercenaries mentioned a hidden Stellaran colony. Is this true? Nyx hesitated, looking at Darius. He nodded slightly, a gesture of trust. Yes, she said, a small enclave hidden in the Cygnus Rift, less than 1,000 survivors. And if we were to offer them protection, alliance rather than subjugation? It would depend, Nyx said carefully, on whether your words matched your actions. The general smiled thinly. A fair assessment. He tapped his datapad. I'm authorizing the formation of a new unit, sensory reconnaissance and early warning. Captain Frost will command with Nyx as his executive officer. Sir, Darius couldn't hide his surprise. Executive officer. With an appropriate rank to match, the general confirmed. Lieutenant to start. Unprecedented, yes, but so is having an alien who can detect cloaked ships and disrupt enemy neural networks. Later, alone in Darius's quarters, Nyx sat quietly, staring at the lieutenant's insignia the general had presented her. You don't have to accept it, Darius said, watching her. This isn't what I intended when I chose you. What did you intend? She asked, her large eyes searching his face. Darius considered the question. To save one life in a war that's taken too many, to see if there was another way forward beyond endless conflict. He smiled slightly. To make a point to my superiors about looking beyond the obvious. Then now I think we both have the chance to build something new, not just for us but for both our peoples. Nix's antenna twitched thoughtfully. You saw potential in me when no one else did, not even myself. She carefully pinned the insignia to her newly issued uniform. Perhaps it's time to see what that potential can become. Outside the viewport, the twin moons of Theta cast long shadows across the outpost. Beyond them lay the stars, countless worlds, and somewhere among them, the last fragments of a nearly extinct species. But for the first time in years, those fragments held not just the echo of what was lost, but the promise of what might yet be. Tomorrow, Darius said, we begin a new mission. Nix nodded, her antenna rising with newfound purpose. I'm ready, Captain. And in that moment, looking at the unlikely soldier before him, Darius knew he had made the right choice all those months ago. Not because of what she could do, but because of what they could become together. Pioneers of a different kind of future, where potential mattered more than power.